Hello and welcome to the program. Over the years, with the expansion of the internet, citizen journalism has become a more important phenomenon than ever. Some of the most important stories have been broken by just a single person with a fake camera phone in the right place at the right time. With us today is Arik Toller, a writer at Bellingcat, one of the internet's most important sources for investigative citizen journalism. Arik, hello.
Hi there.
So what can you tell us about citizen journalism and why it's so important?
It's important because there's so much materials now that come through user-generated content. So we have social media, we have YouTube, and we have other sources such as witness reports that we can find on Twitter and Contactia and Facebook and other sources. And so with so much of this content being user-generated instead of entirely funneled through journalists, it's important that we know how to find, analyze, and verify this information. A lot of times that requires talking to the original sources, which you can call citizen journalists.
Yes, I remember particularly the Green Revolution in Iran as a major point in history for citizen journalism. I remember watching on Twitter and such, people reporting in the news. So what exactly brought you to citizen journalism? Because roughly the same age, I remember the Green Revolution. So what really brought it to the fore for you?
I studied Russian in graduate school back in America, and I was really interested in the case of the Boeing of MH17. And I started doing research at Bellingcat through that, especially because there's so much content there that was user-generated, such as dash cam videos in Russia and witness reports from Ukrainians who lived in the Donbass. And so because of that, I was interested in how we can find information from these sources and also how we can verify and analyze it and know that it's real and legitimate and not fake.
Yeah, and one very important thing that you've written about is the use of open source data. So what can you tell us about what exactly open source data means?
Yeah, open source information is any information that is freely available and accessible for anyone who has an internet connection. So this could be anything ranging from media reports to user-generated content, such as through social networks, videos, and so on. And also things like satellite imagery, which 10 years ago was very, very basic and was hardly accessible at all by normal people. But now we have Google Earth, Yandex Maps, Bing Maps, all these other sources. And so if you bring all these things together, kind of the utopian version of it is that the journalist and the reader will have equal access to information. So that would theoretically bring trust up and more transparency between the journalist and reader. So you don't have things like anonymous sources, WMDs in Iraq, things like that.
So let's start from the very beginning. Someone is interested in telling their own story, wants to be a citizen journalist, whatever. So step one, what are the first easiest things that someone can look at to really delve deeper into open source data? Or more importantly, what are some very quick ways that someone can self-verify if they see a story and they want to go to the social media page of the person who originally released it? Something along those lines.
Yeah,
what are some easy self-verifications?
The easiest one that most people already know how to do and is the easiest is to just reverse search image or reverse video image search a video or photo that was released. So if you have some breaking news event like a bomb that went off in Brussels or Paris or Moscow or whatever, the easiest thing to do that anyone could do is just go to Google image search and reverse search the image. Also, there's a tool from Amnesty International. If you just type in Amnesty International YouTube data viewer into Google, you can find it very quickly. You can plug in a YouTube video and reverse search it, and that video of a bomb going off in Brussels may actually be an old video from Domodedovo, something like that. And also have normal people, when they find things and they retweet them and share them, if you look more at the person who shared them, it's a lot of times you can find out fairly quickly if they're legitimate or not, because you always see things about fake accounts for, a fake Poroshenko account, right, or a fake Yatsenyuk account. So it's pretty easy if you just give it a critical eye like you would anything else. You can kind of stamp it out at the source.
Yeah, a lot of it just comes down to your own thinking abilities.
Yeah,
so one of the criticisms of citizen journalism is that it creates a both its strength and its weakness creates a very broad field of where you get the information from. I'm sure you've heard this criticism before. So, for example, a lot of people have compared Russian information policy to a fire hose of propaganda, just so much of it that it's lost in the noise. So how would you respond to this version of criticism of because citizen journalism, you don't always know who's providing it. So like you said, verification. But how do you respond to this, and what are some ways to go against that trend?
Well, one thing you have to think about is with citizen journalism, user-generated content I've been talking about, is it doesn't work completely on its own in a vacuum. A lot of times works in conjunction with traditional investigative reporting and shoe leather journalism, where you have people actually go out, knock on doors, and do interviews and such. So don't think about citizen journalism as just a bunch of people who are doing things and doing a thing all by themselves. It works in conjunction, and you can work together with investigative journalists who are trained in more detailed investigative techniques, and so you can get some pieces of information from the citizen journalists, from videos, photos, and so on, and then the more professional journalists can put into context and follow up and with more comprehensive and context-filled investigations. So it's not one or the other. Things can work together quite well.
And one of the verification methods that Bellingcat has been promoting recently is CrossCheck with the French elections. Do you have any information on CrossCheck and how it is being used?
Yeah, I'm not involved with that myself, but I'm a little bit familiar with it. We're working with a lot of other partners, such as First Draft News, to go through claims about the French election. And so it's not just us working solo all by ourselves. We're working in conjunction about 15, 20 other places. And along with a lot of professional news organizations like the AP, Reuters, and so on, there's kind of the source, the work is delegated out for what everyone can do best. So some people will gather information, and we will kind of verify some specific claims related to, a lot of times, social media and satellite imagery, videos, things like that, fake claims that we can verify yes or no on. And then other organizations will work with their specialties. So it's a really interesting group effort, especially after with the U.S. elections, which were a mess with all this fake information coming out. And the idea is we could be a little more proactive in finding and debunking some of the fake news before it really can take hold. Who knows? If it works or not, I'm not sure, but it's worth a try at least.
Yes, you mentioned finding and debunking this fake news. And one criticism I've heard of this, sorry for always going to criticisms, is that you kind of have to play a game of whack-a-mole. Where one story pops up, sure, you debunk that, but then there's 5 others you don't have time for. So is the strategy to just debunk whatever shows up? Is there targeting? Is there whatever is the most promoted? Like, what is the strategy for debunking fake news when you clearly can't get all of it?
Ideally, the readers and the normal person will be better trained to recognize and be a skeptic about fake news. And so a big part of our website, and also with First Draft News and others, is we have a lot of instructional materials on how the normal person can go through and verify and analyze news and information, because the way you analyze news and print journalism is much different. You look for biases and things like that. It's a little bit different with digital journalism, to where things are a lot of times very reliant on photographic and video materials. And a lot of times these fake news stories are built off of these photographic and video materials. So if you just have a he said, she said situation, that's one thing. But when you have a video of supposedly, for example, in the Dutch elections, Dutch-Ukraine referendum, they have, supposed members of the Azov battalion threatened to do a terrorist attack if they didn't vote in favor of the Ukrainian referendum. Well, that takes a little bit longer to debunk, but those are actual concrete video materials you can debunk and see that the guns they were holding were actually from strike ball or paintball guns. And so there's ways you can train people to notice these things, but also a big part of it is we've been doing a lot of trainings for journalists. And so A lot of times these fake news stories spread because journalists may not know right away if something is real or not, and they may not have the capabilities, whether it's from time or from lack of training, to do a lot of verification, debunking of these digital materials. And so we've done a lot of trainings with journalists in particular in Ukraine, Russia, and elsewhere to try to stamp these things out from the beginning, and so they don't spread on mainstream news outlets when someone isn't sure if something is real or not.
So going to the mainstream news outlets, so we have the final firewall, I guess, before it hits CNN or something. So if something gets too big, if something kind of passes the smell test in a way of, okay, this picture, it might be weird, but it looks real enough. So what's the final wall that prevents it from becoming a major story?
Well, a lot of times it just takes one journalist to report on it, one mainstream journalist to report on it, and then once the well is broken, then all these other reporters can report on it. So, for example, if something is published, like a fake video or fake photo is spread on CNN. So, for example, after MH17 downing, CNN published a fake video of a plane crash. And then all these other journalists can say, CNN has reported that, da-da-da-da. And so they aren't reporting so much on the fake materials, but they can report on CNN reporting it. And so it spreads like a virus. And so that right there is, a lot of times you can't control that. But a lot of times, because I understand journalists a lot of times only have, they have to write, 6-7 stories a day, and they may only have, 5-10 minutes to judge something before they put it up as breaking news. And so a lot of times a lot of times it's impossible to completely stop fake news, just because it's impossible to. But a lot of times if you do a lot of very basic verification and checking methods, like, as I mentioned, reverse video and reverse image search, if you do that right away, then you could cut out probably 80% of these fake stories that spread. So on one hand, it's impossible to completely stop it, but at least the best you can do is put a bandage on the wound and stop the worst offenders from spreading. Yeah,
I think that point of just, where does this image come from, a lot of the time that can really put an end to anything too bad. Yeah. So thank you very much for talking to us today.
Sure. Thanks so much.
That's Bellingcat, once again, .com for a source of citizen journalism. So with us today was Arik Toller, a writer at Bellingcat, a source for citizen journalism, especially investigative citizen journalism, telling us how to avoid fake news and gather information that is especially accurate. I'm Anthony Bardaway, and this was UATV.